everyone, it's Becky here and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to a new video, which I know is coming quite a while after I released my latest video, and let me tell you why. I actually filmed this video, which was my February wrap-up, approximately 2 weeks ago. But as it comes out, even after 5 years of doing this, I still find myself sometimes not liking what I film and then not posting it, which is actually very rare. I think this happens for the first time after like 2 years or like in 2 years. But still I decided that I would like to reshoot the video, but I just did not really have that much time. And now it's Sunday and I finally have a day off, so I thought I would love to film a video. But since it's almost the end of March, I just decided to combine it with my February books and also some of the March books which I read. And maybe I'll give you a little heads up on what I'm currently reading, because still now when I'm filming this is the mid-March, so there is a chance I will finish some more books in March, but I just wanted to combine it and just speak about it all together. So without further ado, my friends, let's jump back to February and to all the books which I read in this lovely yet short month. So the first book which I finished in March was KLARA and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. And Kazuo Ishiguro is someone whom I wanted to read for quite a while, and he's also one of the authors from my list of authors I want to read, which I mentioned in this video. And if you missed it, basically I'm doing this sort of like, not necessarily a challenge, but there's been several authors which I had in my mind for quite a while and whose books I wanted to read, and I just never got to this. So at the end of the last year I decided to make the whole list of all these authors and then go one by one and just read their books as sort of like my TBR for 2026 and also the upcoming years, because obviously this list is going to grow and grow, hopefully. And so the Kazuo Ishiguro was one of them, and I decided to pick up KLARA and the Sun as my first read by him. And I must say it probably wasn't the happiest choice, and it's also funny because a couple of you warned me in the comments when I said this, that whilst they enjoyed the book, it wasn't their favorite, and they suggested some other books by this author. And I think that maybe I should have listened and definitely would like to explore those other books as well, because KLARA and the Sun wasn't my favorite. To briefly tell you, so if you haven't read the book, KLARA and the Sun is sort of like a sci-fi book, which is also a genre I do not read very often. So one of the purposes of this TBR with these authors was to explore different, not only authors, but also genres as well, and to have sort of like more versatile reads. And I haven't read a sci-fi probably since the primary school, when we were supposed to read certain books. And I know that this is not like crazy sci-fi, but still it has stuff to do with AI, for example, and robots. And the main premise of this book is that we meet KLARA, who is artificial friend, as they are called, and we live in a time where every child is supposed to have one of these artificial friends. So basically they are AI robots, and they're supposed to spend time with them, play with them, learn with them, be their companions, basically. That's like very brief premise I think you need to know. And I would start with the first issue I had with this. It's probably the genre itself, because whilst I really appreciate a lot of good things coming from technology and internet, obviously, and even like AI, I do personally struggle a lot with some ideas AIs are representing, and especially when it comes to like stealing art from other people, which is a big topic right now, or even stealing jobs from people not necessarily from the artsy world, but just the jobs that should not be replaced by robots and should be done still by humans, in my opinion. But that's like whole another topic. So I think that already here I was a little bit, you know, predisposed to not enjoy the book as much. And whilst I appreciate this book to open quite a lot important and difficult topics, such as one of them being what makes us as human beings unique, and if there is such a thing that makes us unique, really, whether it's soul or heart or these types of things, there were still more things which I did not like about the book, such as, for example, some things where on sort of like a surface level suggested, but then they didn't really evolve into a bigger or deeper conversation, and I felt like I missed some understanding of certain things. And then the main point, which might be a spoiler, I'm not really sure, but it probably will be. So if you haven't read this book and you would like to give it a go, please maybe jump to another book. And if you are here because you read the book, maybe let me know, because one thing I was confused about was actually the whole thing regarding the healing. Because I know now, after quite a while, that probably it had something to do with being lifted, so the young girl being lifted. But still, I thought that, because as you know, like the young girl is ill and KLARA is trying to help her, and one of the ways she is trying to help her is through the sun, because sun worked for her, is the way she recharges, re-energized, and she assumed that that's going to be same for the girl, that the sun can heal her. And this is where I got a little bit confused and where I did not get the book as much, because I assumed that this healing way is not going to work, and that it would be one of the things that basically points out that whilst AI and the robots and all of these things can be useful in some ways, they still cannot really be fully capable of understanding certain things and of thinking. And the decision KLARA makes, or like things she needs to do in order to do this healing, are actually going to bring some bad consequences, which will point out that yes, AI might be good for certain things, but not for everything, because nothing can really replace human beings and the way our brain works. And then it didn't happen, and actually the healing worked with the sun, and I was a little bit confused. So I do think it was because the girl was lifted in a way, which is also something which I would like to have more details on this particular thing. So yeah, you know what I mean. And then coming back to the first topic, like what makes us unique and can we be replaced by AI in the future? That's an important topic to discuss, and I like that. But still, the fact with the healing and the sun, I just wasn't really big fan of this. So yes, my friends, that was my first experience with Kazuo Ishiguro, but I do want to pick up more of his books and still would like to read some more from him, but maybe something less with AI and robots. But if you had different opinion, which is absolutely fine, I would love to hear it in the comments, so please let me know what were your thoughts on KLARA and the Sun. Okay, my friends, the second book which I finished in February was this one, which I have a physical copy of, and it's called The Madonna in Fur Coat, and I very much enjoyed this. Wait a second, sorry, I need to put my coffee down. So basically this is quite a short book, and it's a story of love, uninquired love. And first of all, which comes to my mind as a comparison, not necessarily books, but more movies. If you are someone who enjoy movies like Moulin Rouge, or for some reason it comes to my mind For Weddings and Funeral, this might be a book that you could enjoy, because it's one of those stories when we have a sweet young man who is in love with a woman, and for whatever reason this woman cannot really reciprocate the love. And whilst I enjoy reading books like this, it just always gives me such a high blood pressure, because even if I understand the women and the background and maybe the trauma and all the reasons why she is not just throwing herself on the young man and be happy, whilst I understand that, I just, during reading these books, I just want to shake those women and just be like, can you just love him and be happy, please, and make me happy as well? So it's this type of book. Also, which I appreciate, it's sort of like story within story, where we meet this young man at the beginning of the book, and he is talking about this older man he is meeting or seeing or working with. This older man, he is sort of like a mystery, like nobody knows much about him. But one day this older man gets ill, and the younger man sort of like visits him and in a way takes care of him a little bit. But then through the journal of the older man, the young man tells us the story of this older man. I completely forgot the names at this point, which is quite horrible, but I'm sorry, hopefully you get what I mean. So it's sort of like story within story, which we get to know the character through his journals, which is reading, which the younger character is reading. Very beautiful writing. It gives you a lot of things to think about, especially when it comes to love, importance of love and relationships. And it reminded me a little bit of White Nights by Dostoevsky, which I read actually in January. So if you like this type of books, highly recommend. It's a very thin book, and you can do it in one reading, really. Okay, I just realized that you can absolutely see my pyjama bottoms, which I was trying to hide from you, but yes, I'm still wearing my pyjama because it's Sunday morning, so sorry. But I made an effort and put nice sweater on the top, so anyway. So my friends, the third book which I was reading in February was called The Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, who is another author from my list whom I wanted to read. And this is another very short book which I read, and I very much liked it, much more than the first one again. But still, what I missed in this one was to be actually longer, because I felt like this book was speaking about so many different themes and topics which I would love to explore more and read into in more depth. But still, it was a lovely spend time, and definitely do want to read more books by this author, so this was a successful one. From my list of authors. But anyway, it's a story which is set in Ireland in 80s, and the main character is a young man with his family of 5 daughters and wife. He basically delivers coal to people in the village and also into a monastery where nun lives. And basically, for me personally, the book speaks about 3 different topics which I found there. And the first one is to be happy with the small things, as the title suggests. So that sometimes what can make us happy is not necessarily a big things or events or gestures or something, but it's to be lucky to see your daughters growing up and be polite to other people, for example, and you realizing that you did something well, for example, and things like this that bring you joy. Then another topic which also is a part of the story which I would love to read some more of, was this whole thing of in Ireland in 80s, which is also something I know from like other books and the history a little bit, that there was a case when if some young girls became pregnant in very young age and they were not married, basically they were sent to nuns, to these monasteries who were taking care of them supposedly. However, the reality was that they were treated horribly and even beaten and then starved and stuff, and then the babies were taken away from them, which is like, I know it's a whole thing, like whether this was true or wasn't true, and then and this was something which I would love to explore more and get more of. So this was another part of the story which for me was quite significant. And then another one which I very much enjoy because I felt like it's hitting home a little bit, was the theme of the Christianity versus hypocrisy, and then doing things which you know are right but are hard to do, versus the things which might be the easiest choice but they are not right, and closing your eyes to things which are, or like sort of like to close your eyes to things which you know are difficult to deal with, but you know it's right to do it. You know what I mean? So many different things I found in this book, and I very much enjoyed it, and also love the writing style because it was so easy to get into the story and into the writing, so highly recommend as well. And then, my friends, the last book which I finished in February, and I'm very proud of it because it was quite chunky one. It's called The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Zafón, and he was another author from my list. Like in February I went full on with this list, and I read, I think it was 3 authors from this list. And I think that I found my new favorite author, and it's the same feeling which I got from reading Amor Towles, the author of Gentleman in Moscow, for example, because when I was reading it, I was realizing as I was going through the pages, like, I found my new favorite author, like this is going to be the case, because I just love it, and especially this book, if you like to read about secret libraries and old spooky mansions and uninquired love, and do you like a little bit of mystery which gives you like plot twist that your mouth is going wide open. And I was just laughing at myself because I was reading this quite a lot in my work during the lunch break or when I had a little bit of time. And in my work, so basically the place where I am sitting most of the time has like the round windows which are going to the street. And then when I was thinking, if somebody was looking at me through the street passing by, and to see all my face expressions as I was reading the book, it must have been quite funny. So highly recommend. Also, very interesting point for me with this one was that I was so happy to actually read it as ebook and to have a dictionary built in my e-reader, because that's something I never really thought of, because 99% of books which I've been reading for past several years are only in English. I would say like 99.9% of books. So I do consider myself to know English quite well, and even sometimes when I don't know the exact meaning of some word, obviously I understand the whole context, so I don't really think about it that much. But in this particular case, there were so many words which I thought like, okay, hold on, I have a dictionary and I can use it, so I actually can, you know, like translate it easier. It literally enriched my vocabulary. There were so many synonyms and so many words which I never really heard of before. So even in this way, the book is so interestingly and beautifully written. It might be different for somebody who is, I don't know, from UK or when you grow up with English as well. But I do think I have quite a rich vocabulary, especially when it comes to like reading and knowing words, but this time it was really useful. So highly recommend to have some dictionary with you as well, especially if you are maybe not native speaker, so to say, or whatever. But it was very interesting, and honestly, like so many quotes which I loved and underlined, and yeah, already have the list of other books by this author which I do want to read. So if you read anything by this author and maybe you have some favorite books, let me know, because I just loved it. But one thing I wanted to point out with this book, so whilst it's absolutely amazing, obviously, it does have quite a lot of characters. So I did not need a characters map to do, but I had to be really focused sometimes when I was reading, because it's one of those stories which at the beginning already gives you quite a lot of characters, but then as the story goes on and sort of like a mystery which is happening unwraps, there are more people coming and more characters, and it's also a lot of things are told through the point of view of different people and through letters, and then sort of like story within story, and then mentioning different time periods and different years and different memories of people, and then always new characters appearing in those stories. So it's something to be ready for, that it's good to have time to read that book and to focus a little bit, because there were times when I had to pause for a sec and think like, okay, wait, who is this and what happened? So yes, but definitely so worthy. Okay, my friends, so that was my February wrap-up. I must say I'm quite happy with this, because I managed to read 4 books, and although at least 2 of them were quite thin, I think The Shadow of the Wind made up for that. It was quite chunky, but it was, definitely my favorite book from the February. And now, my friends, moving to my March reads. So basically at this point, I think it's 20th March today, or 21st, I'm not even sure when I'm recording this, or 22nd, I don't know. But at this point, I finished 2 books. The first one being, hello, I don't know if you can hear it on camera, I hope not, but if you do, I'm sorry, and if not, then good. So the first book which I finished is The Good Girl by Aria Aber, and this is a debut novel by the author, and I already spoken about this on my Instagram before, and I must say that on one hand I enjoyed it and it was interesting read, which was quite easy to get into, but then it became a little bit repetitive. So basically this book tells a story of Nila, or Naila, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, who is our main character, a young teenage girl who was born to Afghan parents, but she lives in Berlin. And she's sort of like gets caught up between Berlin underground and a lot of drugs and techno music and a relationship with quite older man who is this sort of like wannabe artist, and also how all of this is mixed with expectations of her parents for her life, coming from their own traditions and the way Afghan parents, so to speak, raise their children. I don't mean to generalize, but that's how I got the feelings from the book. So this is one big topic. So sort of like young girl growing up and finding herself in this world, in different country, which is different from the traditions she comes from, but she was born in Berlin already, and she wants to live differently from what her parents expect from her. So that's sort of like one big theme. And then the other one is how immigrants and refugees are treated in the new countries they come to, and how are they accepted, or if they are accepted. So I I would say very interesting and important one to read, one of those type of books. However, in the same time, as I mentioned, it was easy to get into this book, and I very much enjoy reading about the history of her family and her parents who came to Berlin, and all the history before, and then how they had to adjust and how that affected their life. But then I felt like the second half of the book was quite repetitive, especially when it comes to being at the parties all the time and taking drugs, and then dealing with the relationship, which obviously is... It's just no point in having that relationship, and even maybe she realized it herself because of some things that happened. She is still feeling drawn to this man. So yeah, that would be the first thing which I didn't enjoy, that it was quite repetitive, and then also the character development felt like there was not much of it from anyone, so to speak. So I gave this 3.5 stars when I was writing on it on Instagram, but now after several more days I feel like more 3 stars. But still, interesting book. Also quite trigger warnings to be aware of. Obviously a lot of addiction, drugs, alcohol, then abuse as well, abusive relationship, also death. So yeah, not an easy read, but I think it's one of those books which is important to read just to have an idea and be aware of different things and topics when it comes to like immigrants, refugees and stuff. Okay, my friends, and then the other book which I finished in March, which I had on audio, was There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak, and she's the author whom I actually wanted to put on my list as well, but somehow she was there unofficially, so I'm glad I had a chance to read or listen to one of her books, and that was very interesting one as well. And funnily enough, even without knowing it, I picked up the book which was a little bit similar with certain topics as A Good Girl, which I just mentioned. But There Are Rivers in the Sky is a book which is set in 3 different time periods, in 3 different places, and it's one of those cases which I really like in books, that somehow these seemingly unrelated characters and storylines, somehow they connect, or they are connected somehow. And the first one is set in London in 1872, I think, 1870s, where we meet this young man called Arthur, who basically grows up in the very poor conditions, but he is very talented when it comes to memory. And then the other stories one is from 2014 from Nineveh, a young girl with her grandmother and her people, and then from 2018 again in England, meet our character Zeylika, who is now getting divorced, but she's this sort of like a scholar slash scientist. And basically what these characters and storylines have in common is to be sort of like fascinated by the poem of Gilgamesh, which is this old poem, whom originally in 1870s author was trying to translate and travel to Mesopotamia and Nineveh, and was trying to find lost pieces from this poem. And then you can see where the story is going. And also, whilst doing all of this, everyone from these characters, from these different storylines are dealing with something personal, obviously, in their lives, such as, for example, divorce and relationship, and then traveling, and then especially 2014. So that is also one of those books which speaks a lot about refugees or immigrants. Oh, sorry, my camera died. But yeah, what was I saying? So basically it speaks about not necessarily refugees coming to different country, but people invading the country, and then also opens a topic of, for example, even in the past and until today, whether it's when, for example, I'm not gonna say concrete nations, but then when some countries are taking artifacts and memorabilia and important documents and basically archaeological finds from the original countries, and they take them to their own countries for the purposes of museum, whether there is better to sort of like say that, well, we are protecting it by taking it from its original countries and from their people's heritage, and we want to let other people to see it, and it's better to protect it in this way, as opposed to whether it's better to leave the heritage of the country to its original country for their people to have and admire and remember. So I would say also quite a lot of interesting topics, but also not an easy read, because it gives a lot of trigger warnings to be aware of, such as a lot of violence and abuse and death and even rape and these sort of things. But definitely made me want to explore more books by this author, and I do want to read more by her. Also the audiobook version which I had by the narrator, whose name I don't remember, but I'll write it here, it was narrated very well, and also the note for the reader is read by the author herself. So that was something very interesting as well. So if you read some books by this author, please let me know in the comments which ones to maybe pick up as next, because as I said, I would definitely love to explore her writing much more. So yes, my friends, those were the 2 books which I finished, and I was thinking that maybe I could give you a little heads up on the books which I am currently reading and what's going on actually. Because I also felt like I wanted to catch up with you a little bit, because since we spoken last time, I think it was like the end of January, I wanted to ask you how are you doing and what are you reading and your favorite book from the February or even March right now. So please let me know in the comments, and yeah, just wanted to catch up a little bit. So anyway, starting with my current reads, and the first one which I will mention is this one, which is called The 40 Days Through the Bible, which is a little devotional book which I'm reading for the Lent, but I am a little bit behind because I'm combining it with some other Bible readings, so I think I will carry this even after the Lent and just doing it daily. So basically this is my first book by Lisa Turcoist. Sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but I saw one sermon by her and I quite enjoyed it, and then I was looking for something which I could read over the Lent, and I came across this book, and then I recognized the name of the author, and I thought, okay, this might be a good starting point for me. And basically, if you're interested, so it is a book which takes you through the whole Bible, so from the Old Testament to the new one, and for every day you have a little bit of a text which gives you something to think about regarding the passage from the Bible it speaks about, and then you also have some questions for yourself to answer, and sometimes those questions are regarding literally the Bible, that you can sort of like find the answer there from different verses, but then sometimes those are things just for you to think about from your personal life, where it's literally just for you. And the whole theme of this is the answer to your deepest longings. Funnily enough, when I picked this up, I didn't really notice this subtitle. I only went for something which I can read over the Lent for 40 days. But the main theme is how God made promises to his people and they were always fulfilled, and how even when we have some longings, either it gets answered, or if it gets answered differently from what we wanted, we will see at some point that that's how it was meant to be, because it's better eventually. So this is the one I'm reading right now, and then I started an audiobook yesterday, which I completely forgot the name of the title, because I always wanted to name it differently than what it's called, but it's called Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. Yes, I think so. And I don't have that much to say about this book at this point, because I only started to read it yesterday and I heard like 1 hour from this, and I think together it's like less than 9 hours, so there is still a journey for me to go. But it was quite, not necessarily a spontaneous read, but when it comes to reading books about mythology, it's also one of those genres which I just do not very much read, because how would I say it? For me, this genre is just confusion. Like, I don't know how to say this. I don't, like, yes, the truth is that I do not have necessarily a huge knowledge when it comes to the Greek mythology or different mythologies, only from some short books which I read maybe at school. But obviously at the beginning of every of these books you usually get like the character descriptions and sort of like something that can get you easier into the story and then understand who is who and what is happening. And it's same with this one. But I only read, I think it was Circe, if I pronounce it correctly. I still don't know until this day how to pronounce the name. But I read this approximately 4 years ago, and I remember reading it because I wanted to read this genre. And I was just like, this is too much. Honestly, like every time I pick these books up, I'm just so overwhelmed, because I feel like there is so much happening, and everyone from these gods is, you know, like doing something and killing each other and making children, and then those children are doing intrigues with another children and then cursing each other, and they're again having children, and yeah, like every time I open it, it's like the image I have in my head, like when I open books like this, I just hear all the noise in my head and I just cannot even focus on the reading. And so far with this one, because I was like, I cannot go on like this, I do want to be able to read these books as well. And when I saw this one in Audible, it had very good reviews, and I was like, is this supposed to be about the Medusa? you know, like the snakes in her hair. And I thought, okay, I know this story more or less the best from all the like mythological stories and creatures, so I would like to give it a go. So I started to listen to it, but already this hour in, I'm like, like, I don't know. So let me know, please, what is your relationship to reading books like this? Because I know there is so many of them recently and I wanted to read them, even like the Piranesi, for example, and then the Song of Achilles. I'm not really sure if that goes that much into like a mythology with gods as well, or if it's very different, but like, you know, these type of books. And I always want to read them, but then every time I start to think about picking them up, I get this feeling of like I'm gonna be just confused. So I don't know, but let me know what is your experience with these books, and maybe if you read this one, a specific one, let me know what you thought of it. And yeah, actually one thing I forgot to mention, which is sort of like my current read, but I think I'll just DNF it, unfortunately, and it's the Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. And Ocean Vuong was one of the authors on my list as well. I think he was almost the last one. I have one more to go, which I'll tell you in a second. And I started to read this one and I just cannot get into it. Like, I am now approximately 120 pages in, and last 40 or 50 pages I was really kind of like pushing myself to pick it up and read it and thinking, okay, I will get into it and it will get better, but it's just not. And I'm thinking that maybe I will put it aside. I still do want to read other books by this author, especially the one which was very popular, or how you can call it, like On the Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous or something like that, and I would like to read it. I can already appreciate the writing style and how the book is written, like I really like it, but just the story itself in this particular case, I just cannot really get myself to enjoying it very much and feel keen to pick it up really. So yes, my friends, and very brief catch up on my list of authors I want to read. So basically, as I mentioned in this video, so I had my first 6 authors and I already went through 5 of them, and now the last one, which I haven't picked up yet, is Elena Ferrante, and that's something which I would like to read in April. So I'm thinking that hopefully at the end of April I will be done with this first part of the 6 authors, and then I can make a whole video about it, and then hopefully introduce you another 6 authors which I have on my list, which I'm gonna be reading in upcoming months, and obviously reading many other books in the meanwhile, because as I did with these other ones. 2 books which I have on my TBR, which I do want to read this year, thinking about it more and more, is Brothers Karamazov and then Anna Karenina. I do feel like exploring Russian literature a little bit and the classics, because I saw many people reading it now because it's March of the Mammoth, and both of these books are quite chunky ones. And with Brothers Karamazov, I do not have basically any idea what is the book about. I only know the title, and my entire life I managed successfully avoiding any sort of like film adaptations, book readings, and even I know in Slovak National Theatre a couple of years ago it was the whole play, which was very successful, and I wanted to see it, but somehow I was not able to get into it. So still for me it's a mystery, and I literally know nothing about it except that it probably will be some sort of like generational huge books about generation of families and relationship within, I guess, brothers. So that's all I know about it, but I really do want to read it. And then Anna Karenina, because I only seen different film adaptations, but I never read the book. And then I realized actually that I don't think I ever read anything by Tolstoy in general. And I think Anna Karenina is a good point to start. So I do actually own the copy in Slovak, but I think I would like to read it in English. I think I might give it a go in Slovak. I actually have, I don't know if you can see it, but I don't want to stand up so you don't see my pajama buttons. But this 1 and 2, so I have these older editions. But I think I will give it a go and start to read it in Slovak maybe, and then if I don't really feel like it, I will just jump to English one. I'll see. Anyway, my friends, I'm gonna finish my coffee. This is actually another funny thing which happened to me before the Lent. You know how during the Lent you're supposed to sort of like give up some things, and for example if you spend too much time on social media, it's nice if you take a little break from it, or then even regarding food. And for me, I decided to add something, as for example reading the Bible every single morning, which I'm trying to do which I'm trying to do every day anyway, but now to be more dedicated with it and pick it up before my phone and stuff like this, and going with the book. So that was one thing. But then I accidentally also added drinking coffee to my life, because I never drank a coffee. A little story time if you have a second. So basically my partner, he got a new coffee machine from my parents for his 30th birthday last summer, and because he really likes to drink coffee, and I never drank coffee, and he never was drinking coffee with milk. And then the other day we were like, why don't we ever at least try to use the little thingy which is for foaming the milk, you know, for like cappuccino, because I used to work as barista like for several years when I was in Scotland, and I was making coffee for people, but never drank coffee myself. I was always, you know, teacup the storyteller, so I always just drank tea. And then I was like, okay, I can give it a go. And then my friends, I just drink coffee now. But, you know, not necessarily in a way that I needed caffeine, because I'm a very hyper person even just without it, but I just enjoy in the mornings, especially when I have my Bible time, to make cappuccino from oat milk, which also is something I never was drinking. I always had lactose-free milk because I'm lactose intolerant, but but I never use like oat milk or anything like this, and now I just like it so much to make a coffee in the morning and then make foamy milk from oats and then just drink it because it's a little bit sweet, and then have my Bible with it, and now I drink it almost every day. Sometimes I don't, because I want to prove myself that I don't need the caffeine, so sometimes I deliberately, even if I feel like having coffee, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna have it. But then, yeah, so that's my little story of Lent, that instead of giving up something, I actually developed a little coffee, not addiction, but likeness to drink coffee. Anyway, my friends, okay, I've been rambling too much, and I have like 4 minutes left on my camera card. So I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I would love to hear your opinion on these books, and if you never read these books, please let me know what are you currently reading and what are you drinking, whether you are more coffee or tea person, because I used to be tea, now I'm coffee drinking person a little bit. And I think I'm getting a little bit hungry because now my brain is just going and going and going. So I'm gonna finish this video, and thank you for being here. And if you watch until here and you have nothing else to say, you can leave little coffee emoji. I think there is coffee emoji in the comments, but yeah, I'm rambling too much. Anyway, my friends, have a lovely time, and I will see you again in another video, hopefully soon. Bye bye.